Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Bright Ideas Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Trent Deersmith, and I'm here to help you discover what is working in e-commerce today by shining a light on the tools, the tactics, and the strategies in use by today's leading entrepreneurs. And in today's episode, I am joined by Dave Hoffman. Dave is a serial entrepreneur building multi-million-dollar companies. He's led the international trade powerhouse Global Regency, shipping products worth over $200 million to over 40 countries, as CEO for the last 15 years, and is considered an expert in China sourcing, supply chain, private label, and brand licensing. Dave, thank you so much for making some time. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Trent. Happy to be here.
Yeah, no problem. So let's start off with, just in your own words, who are you and what do you do? What do you spend your days doing?
Trent, so I'm David Hoffman. I moved out to China about 16 years ago from South Africa. We were in the consumer electronics business, and we came here really because we were sourcing most of our product through China, and it was just necessary to kind of have a physical presence here. So, since I got here, we've built a really big supply chain business, sourcing products, doing quality control, and managing bigger supply chains. And our recent project, which is what occupies my time mostly, is we started Global TQM, which is a business where we help entrepreneurs and small businesses to source products, manage their supplier relationships, handle their quality control. And literally most of my day is spent dealing with things around that and talking to people, around those things.
All right. So with respect, so you're in China, you've sourced a product or two during your period of, during your career. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people making when it comes to sourcing products from China?
I think it's expectations. People, I find myself included, at least certainly at the beginning, where you kind of got this expectation that product quality is always going to be perfect, and that delivery is always going to be perfectly on schedule, and that samples are going to be perfect when you're dealing with manufacturers. And I just think that whole expectation is and was so wrong. And I kind of quickly learned that sourcing products from China, dealing with Chinese manufacturers, is really an ongoing challenge and requires a lot of patience and a lot of attention to detail. And it's really a long process.
So for someone who's new into sourcing from China, I've done a little bit of it, but not very much. The go-to website seems to be Alibaba. Is that still a great way to go, or are there other more effective ways?
Trent, there's lots of websites like Alibaba, China Sources. There's trade show websites like Global Sources as well. There's Made in China. There's so many websites. I think the challenge and why we certainly for our own product sourcing have our own team here on the ground in China, and why we, ended up diverting into a business of offering services around it, is because it's really challenging to really vet your suppliers and know who you're dealing with. And build that relationship with the suppliers and the trust, because there is a transfer of money, of deposits, of final payments before goods ship as well, and you don't really know what you're getting. So I think I'm a massive advocate of casting the net wide to find suppliers, and Alibaba is a great resource for that. But I think you've got to go deeper. You've got to go deeper than just that to build relationships, understand who you're buying from and what you're buying. Because it's dangerous, but you can be successful if you're patient.
So going deeper, how do you go deeper? Is that working with a buyer's agent? Is that hopping on a plane and going to the Canton Fair? Like, what do you suggest people do?
Yeah, it's either of them. I think everybody's journey is different. I'm a massive advocate of hopping on a plane, coming to China and visiting your suppliers. I think once you see their manufacturing facilities and you meet them face to face, it's quite a game changer in terms of communication, in terms of understanding their capabilities, in terms of just knowing what you're going to get, and also just having that relationship where they want to support you and help you. So I think that's huge. using agents and companies like us, for example, I think is very, very helpful. Of course, if you don't have time to travel and to do some background checking, I still personally believe the best thing is to come out on your own. And I think trade shows is another really great way. I'm a big advocate of trade shows, just visiting trade shows where you can meet multiple suppliers face to face at the same time and really touch and feel products and, get a lot of exposure and new ideas.
So back in 2005, I made my first trip to China,
Yes.
not really having a clue what I was doing. We spent a couple of days, quote unquote, touring factories, but my assistant at the time set it all up. And thinking back now, we really were just visiting sales offices. So I
Yes.
don't know. In hindsight, I don't think it was a very well-planned trip. So if someone is planning, they're thinking, okay, I want to be serious about this. I'm going to do
Yeah.
all my research and I'm not, taking a stab at this. I am going to be successful in this business. For those people, I think a trip to China probably is a pretty darn good investment of time and money, because I'm guessing there's a whole lot of benefits. Like, again, using my own experience, there was emails going back and forth and samples and delays and takes forever. Walk me through, first of all, how do you prepare? Assuming that you're going outside of the window of the Canton Fair, which is a turnkey experience. You just go, you show up, you talk to everybody.
Yes.
Assuming you're going outside of that window, how do you prepare, first of all, for the trip? And then when you're
Yes.
there, I mean, how many days should you go, and what is the best practices for making sure that you really get the best bang for your buck?
Okay, that's a good question. So I think there's personally, actually, I think trade shows are the way to go. And I'll talk about outside of a trade show what to do. Why do I love trade shows? Because I don't think there's a better opportunity to see multiple suppliers at one
Mm-hmm.
time. If you've got 2, 3, 4 days, just being able to visit them, sit with them face to face, see their products, meet their people, and then go to the next booth and the next supplier and have the same conversation over and over again. I just think that's the most productive use of time. What I would suggest, though, is if you've met, is maybe come a few days after the trade show as well. So you meet a couple of suppliers, because you can spend your whole day meeting suppliers to narrow it down, find a few things of interest, see who's kind of coming up with the right product, the right price, who you can communicate well with, and then spend, a couple of days at the end of the trade show going to visit their factories. And they're always
Mm-hmm.
more than happy to take you to the factory. I think with the factories, if you're very specific and say to them, I want to come see your production line, I want to come see your production facilities, they will take you not just to their sales office, but to their factory where you can see the products being produced. Because I think it's very, very helpful to understand, like how they've set up their production line and organized themselves, and you get a real good feeling for how they run their business and how they make the product. And understanding how the product's made will also help you a lot, because you get ideas, you understand more what goes into the product, you become a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more patient or tolerant of certain things. I think that's really the right way to go. If you're not going to do a trade show, what I would do is I would just do my research in advance, find a whole bunch of suppliers that I want to meet, and just plan a trip to go to their factories. And if it's 3 or 4 factory visits, I would go to their factories, I would insist on seeing their showrooms and their factory facilities, and I'll do exactly the same thing. I'll just do like a bit of a circuit, I call it.
Yep.
The challenge with a circuit like that is it really is time consuming, because the distances in China can be really far, and you don't
Yeah.
always know where the factories are located. You could do a factory a day, which
Yeah.
is really low productivity.
Yeah.
At a trade show, you can meet 30 factories a day, and then at the end of it, go visit 2 of them that you really like, or products
Okay.
you're really interested in.
All right. So
But I think
let's
touching and feeling products is key, Trent. Sorry.
let's stick with, we're going to go to trade shows. How
Yes.
often are trade shows taking place? I'm guessing they're happening pretty
Oh,
regularly.
wow. Every single month there's a trade show.
Okay. So there would be no reason to go and not go the trade show route if they're every month.
Absolutely. Trent, we've built businesses off the back of finding products at trade shows. We've had no idea what product to do sometimes. We've just found stuff and go, oh, wow, that's great. And we've launched a product in a couple of months.
Really? And was that
Yeah.
product then sold on Amazon, or was it sold through your own channel?
Different channels, sometimes just Facebook ads into a sales funnel, other times on Amazon. In one case, we built an entire business, which was an online store direct to consumer, which was literally just filled with products we found at trade shows all the time.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're there and you're the newbie and you probably, it's almost like you're glowing because everyone knows you're a newbie. How do you determine if the person you're talking to is the actual manufacturer or if they're just a trading company, and why does it matter?
I think just it's hard to determine with certainty, but normally when you talk to the suppliers and you just face to face and you ask them, I think 9 times out of 10 they're quite honest about it. I think in the old days there used to be a lot of lying and covering up. I think it's really changed a lot. I think if you just actually ask the guys now, if they're a trading company or if they're the manufacturer, I really think most of the time they'll tell you now. That's also the benefit of doing the site visit. If you're really going to go to the next level with the supplier, is going to their factory. You'll get a good feel straight away if they're the factory or not, because if the guys work there all the time and that's where they're based and that's where they're located, you'll go there, you'll see they have a desk, they know all the people, they walk around freely. If they're a trading company, you'll probably find they go there and then somebody else joins the party and starts escorting you around. And you'll feel like they're a visitor too and being shown around the factory. So you can get a good feeling for it. And when you build that relationship and travel with them and travel to their factories, they tend to feel more comfortable to open up more. There are ways to do like mini supplier checks and audits and some background checks. We do stuff like that for people. But I think the truth be told, if you build the right relationship and talk to them well and go visit their factories, you're going to get to the truth. And if you ask them outright, they will really lie.
Okay. And I'm assuming they all speak pretty good English or good enough English.
Good enough, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And so one thing I've learned, Trent, sorry, I'll just say quickly, one thing I've learned is you got to deal with these guys. They're your suppliers and you to have a relationship. And if the English is not good enough, for many reasons, I think you want to move on. You need to be able to communicate with your suppliers.
Yeah. Hell yeah. So how do we find all of the good trade shows to consider going to?
Trent, there are so many. The biggest one is the Canton Fair. When you go online to cantonfair.org, I think it is, and every April and every October, they run 3 phases, like consistently for the last 20 years. So those 3 phases are massive, and depending on product category you're in, you go to phase 1 or phase 2 or phase 3. Each phase lasts a week. So that alone, there's almost nothing you can't find.
You mean Canton is 3 weeks long?
3 weeks long, 3 phases,
oh my
3
God.
different categories of product. They actually run a week, they shut down for 2 days, and then all those exhibitors move out and new exhibitors move in. And it is massive now. It's actually insanely massive. I don't even know how they do it logistically. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Easy to be overwhelmed, I'm going to guess.
Exactly. And then there's like the HKTDC website. They've got shows all over. There's a Global Sources website. They've got sources all over. They've got trade shows all over. So if you just Google trade shows for industries you're interested in, you'll find tons. There's a few major show organizers like Global Sources, HKTDC, and Canton Fair. Just between those 3 alone, you don't need more. You just need to get out there and find stuff.
All right. So how about preparing for the trade show? What are some of the most important things to do prior to jumping on the airplane?
I think homework. I think you've got to have an idea what product categories you're interested in. I think you need to have an idea of prices, what prices are like in the market. I think you need to know how to do your costings. because it doesn't really help. What I think we do well at trade shows is we can walk around from booth to booth, meet suppliers. We could find a product, whether it's earphones or whatever, and say, how much is this? If the guy says $2, I can take a calculator and in 20 seconds calculate what that's going to land me at and what I'm going to sell it at.
Yeah.
So I can straight away make a decision. So I think, and no, what if that's going to retail at $20? I'm out of the game. So move on to the next product.
Is there a quick rule of thumb? Sorry to cut you off. Is there a quick rule of thumb for that? Or you look at something that's small, fits in your hand, and it's $2? Do you know right away, well, it's got to be at $14 at least, or is there a multiple?
Yeah. Normally it depends on where you're shipping to, but if you do enough costings, you can just take it, multiply by the exchange rate, add X% for shipping and freight and handling, so you know what your shipping cost is going to be. So I think, just for example, I know when we do products in South Africa, I know a multiple of 11 will give me my landed cost. It's just works out every time.
Multiple
so
of
doing
what?
a few 11 actually.
11.
So like $2 times 11, I'll get my landed cost in South African rands. And I know.
Wait a minute. So you pay $2 for something. Your landed cost is going to be $22, and then you still have to sell it for like 40 on Amazon.
It's going to be 22 rand because my factor includes my exchange rate.
Okay.
So I'm buying in one currency, selling in a different currency. So in Australia, our conversion rate's different. So in the US, So just being able to do a quick costing, literally times exchange rate times whatever percent you believe is going to cost you to ship and to distribute, and because you want to sift through stuff very quickly, you don't want to waste time. What you don't want to do is collect tons of information and then go back and try cost it all and then No, you want to cut through all the rubbish. You want to get straight to what you're interested in and find the little things that are going to work and then go deeper.
All right. So when you walk into the booth, I mean, I've been to a reasonable number of trade shows here in the US, and they're busy. You're busy. For the folks that are new, they're going to walk in. They don't have that. They don't have that confidence in their stride right away. That's going to not make the greatest impression on a supplier, because they're thinking, oh man, do I really want to talk to this guy? He's maybe not going to buy very much from me or whatever. What are some of the clever things that you can do to make sure that, the first 30 to 60 seconds, you make a good first impression on a potential supplier?
So what I do is, first you got to walk up with confidence, say, hi, how you doing? Do you work here? Can you talk to me? Let them see that you're confident and that you kind of know what you're doing. I just start talking to them about the products. So a couple of things to really make them feel like you know what you're doing is just ask a couple of key questions that they can relate to. Like I always ask, what's the MOQ on this? It's a minimum order quantity. Because then straight away they know that, okay, you understand what that means, and they feel good about it. They don't have to tell you. And you say, okay, so if they tell, okay, the MOQ is 1,000 or 5,000, you go, okay, great. So what's the price for 5,000 pieces? And then they're normally willing to tell you that, because you've kind of set that precedent that you're going to talk about 5,000 pieces. I don't really start lowballing them yet. If I'm only interested in 500, for example, after I talk to them a little bit and I see it's a bit warmer, then I might say, well, look, if we were to try this at 500 pieces, how much extra would it cost? And I very often will say, look, we import loads of products. I mean, we do huge imports, exports. But what I will say to them sometimes is I'll say, look, this is a new category for me. We haven't done it before. I just caught my interest. I was walking past. This looks really interesting. Tell me about it, right? And they feel happy, and they feel, people love recognition. They are humans. You say, oh, look, this is my category, but I love this. This is great. I don't know if we can sell it. Tell me more. We do loads of other products. They love to talk about it. So I think just lighten it up a bit, and be honest in a way that doesn't make you look like an amateur importer. Okay. And it's really as simple as that.
So that covers your first impression. After that, obviously, just ask smart questions about the product and what it's going to cost and how long it's going to take and so forth. Are there any kind of gotchas, things that a new person might forget to ask when they're in the booth, when they're they're in the booths and they're making their short list of suppliers they're going to follow up with afterwards?
Yes, I think the most important things to really understand, we already spoke about the minimum order quantities. I do think that's important to understand, and their flexibility on that, because if the guy really does have an MOQ of 10,000 pieces and they're never willing to budge on that, even at a surcharge or an extra price, you do want to move on. You can't waste time on that. And I don't think you should be shy about addressing that. A lot of people want to order below the MOQ, and it's nothing to be shy of. I think the biggest thing to ask about is compliance. Most people will get excited. I was guilty of that years ago too. I find products get so excited, and I never ask about compliance in terms of, every country's got different safety standards or requirements that are necessary to import the product. And it's easy to get caught up excited in a product, and then you go, oh, but hold on, do I have the safety certificates for the US or Australia or wherever you're selling it to?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the factories, that's where they come short. They might be selling to one country, loads of volumes. They've never shipped to the US, for example, and then they don't have the compliance and the certificates, and that whole conversation became dead. So I think I always spend time talking to them about which countries they're currently shipping to, because if they're shipping to Western markets and more sophisticated first world markets where regulatory requirements are higher, that makes me feel more comfortable. But then it doesn't guarantee they have it, because loads of people import stuff without the right compliance documents. So, and the factory doesn't even know sometimes. So then I always ask them, what compliance do you need? What safety certificates, what regulations are there? And if they're knowledgeable and can tell me that and tell me they've got it, obviously I feel more comfortable. If they go, oh, I don't know, my customer takes care of all of that, then I hesitate a bit. And hopefully part of the research you've done is just knowing if there's specific categories you want to import, what are the regulatory requirements.
Okay. So now the show's over. I've done my shopping. I've got my short lists. What should I do next? Tell me about the follow-up process.
All right. The follow-up process is actually where everybody falls short. Everybody goes to trade shows and they get so excited by so many products, so many suppliers. And that's where I think most people fall short, is the follow-up, because you think you're going to remember everything and you don't.
Oh, hell no.
So yeah. And you really believe you're going to with like all your heart. I won't forget this. This is so interesting. I love this product. So first, you got to write every single thing down when you're in that meeting. Just make notes, whether it's on their catalog. Just have your information well organized. What I try to do is at the end of each day, send out emails to those suppliers, so that you just, at the end of the day, you take what you shortlisted, send out an email to those suppliers of what you like, what you want, what you need, and let them send you a formal quotation. Because if you do that after the show, which you can, it just depends on time, really. After the show, you got to sit down and start sending out emails to the suppliers and asking for product sheets, for formal quotations, for pictures, so that you can just recap it and build a catalog or do some testing or whatever you want to do. So you need to just get all those emails out just to reconfirm the information and get them communicating with you. And then you want to move into a sampling stage. You need to start ordering samples of the products, based on your requirements or colors or specifications, so that you can just get them, touch them, feel them, and, make sure it's all correct before you order. So it's emailing the factory. Yeah.
Let me jump in with a quick little hack that I found works really well. When I have a great conversation at a trade show with somebody, I take a selfie of me and the person.
Also,
and in my follow-up email, I include the selfie. Helps them remember me, helps me remember them.
It's a great hack. A lot of the factories do that to us now as well. They go, can we take a picture with you? And when they email you and follow up, they put a picture of themselves at the booth so you can remember them.
Nice. So you said samples. There's probably some best practices for getting samples and some gotchas and so forth. Walk me through that.
Well, firstly, you've got to be very clear what you want in terms of specifications. If you really want the sample in the right colors, in the right sizing, etc., or whatever the requirements are, you've got to be very specific about that. Factories generally will send a sample and it's not their best product. Everybody thinks, oh, the sample is going to be perfect. And it's actually really like that. The sample is normally not perfect. The mass production is normally better quality. So I think understanding that at the beginning is important. We do a lot of sampling. So like we get all the samples sent to our office. We get all our samples sent to our office in China, because it just saves a lot of time. And then we
Mm-hmm.
start using the product, testing it, playing with it, and seeing, what the quality is like and what the, the durability is like. And then if there's problems, we start then communicating with the supplier and start telling them, oh, look, we like this, we don't like this. Can you change? Can you change these things? And actually that process is just what I call building your spec. You just slowly, step by step, building your spec and requirements,
Mm-hmm.
which I highly recommend you document every little detail and get a
Mm-hmm.
new sample to tick off all those things, before
Mm-hmm.
you actually place and finalize the order. You want to make sure that the supplier can do it and not just say they can do it.
Yep. Fair enough. Now, do you have any standard operating procedures for the sampling process?
Well, we do. So what we do is, and by the way, Trent, we do this for clients as well, because our offices are in Shenzhen, which is really convenient. So we get all the samples into our office, and then what we do is which is great because it saves time. The factories inside China, can send a sample in 1 or 2 days, versus couriering or shipping them. And very often the factories will either send it for free or they'll cover the shipping cost if it's domestic inside China for them, because you can always send it back if it's not right. So it's really a fast, efficient way of getting things done. But what we do is once we get the sample, like we book it in, whether it's our sample or somebody else's, it doesn't matter. And then we book the sample in, and then we do a photographing of the whole unboxing, so that we,
Mm-hmm.
because we want to see the packaging it came in, the accessories as they unfold. So we actually do a whole unboxing of the samples as they come in, and take close-up pictures, so that, whether it's us or clients, or, if I'm traveling, my guys send it to me. You can go into like all the details to check, what the sample came out like, if it looks good. The minute we've done that, we send it to our guys to test. So we've got engineers at our office. So we've got testing protocols where, depending on what the product category is, we've got different ways of actually testing it. So they'll go into our little lab, and our guys will start, going through functional tests, performance tests, reliability tests. Not all products are that complicated, but, when you get into consumer electronics, for example, it really is.
Yeah.
We do high temperature tests, high pot tests, different things. If it's more homewares products, we'll do things like drop tests. We'll do rub-off tests to see how good the silkscreen printing is, and just general end user testing. And once we've done that whole report, we've got our checklist, we tick all the points off. Some of the checkpoints we've got, by the way, are subjective. It's just like we ask questions like, how did you enjoy using it? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? And then we make an assessment from there.
So you mentioned the word clients. I'm guessing that means that if I don't want to go to China, I can work with your company to basically be my eyes, ears, and feet on the ground in China. And then all my communication is going to be with you. You're going to leverage your network of factories and suppliers that I'm sure you've dealt with on many times in the past to help me source my product without actually having to make that huge trip.
Exactly. So we do offer that kind of your team on the ground in China. We go one step further than that. We don't kind of necessarily become your communication channel. If people want us to, we can, but we kind of see ourselves as like your team on the ground in China, where we say, you need an office in China, we're that, but we don't want to. We want to keep the relationships transparent and visible. We believe strongly, and that was kind of one of the founding values of Global TQM when I decided to go that route, was you have to own the relationship with your suppliers. Nobody else can own that for you. And that's, really important. So like when we do sourcing jobs, for example, we introduce everybody to the factories. They include in the communications. We just want to be there to add services because we've got resource in China. So if you need to check a factory, negotiate with the factory, have that experience, the paperwork, the documentation, receiving samples, going through samples on Skype with you, facilitating all of that and taking a lot of the heavy lifting out. But we don't want to own the relationship between you and the factories. That's really, really important, because I think that's where a lot of people have gone wrong in this industry.
So maybe I can use you if I'm on a tighter budget, or maybe I still have a full-time job and I'm trying to do a moonlighting gig, maybe I can work with you until I get my first product and I've got some cash flow coming in. But ultimately, you're still saying at some point you got to go to China and develop those relationships yourself. And I've
We,
heard from other people that there's really great reasons to do that, and you're basically saying the
yeah,
same thing.
I mean, I practice what I preach. I highly, highly recommend it. I've got loads of people. They start off just, saying, look, just handle it for us. And we do, and we copy them in communications. And sometimes we get on a 3-way Skype call with them and the supplier. And, they launch their first product. And then, a couple of months later, they say, okay, I'm ready to come to China and meet some new suppliers. And we love that. That's really, really important.
Yeah.
And it's not that they stop to use us once they have their relationship. They still use us just in a lower capacity. They say, okay, look, I don't need you handling that anymore. I just receive the samples for us, run through them quickly for us. Or I still want an account manager to do the daily communication because I'm working, but I want to come home once a day and just talk to my account manager and say, okay, what was the feedback here, there? Okay, get them on the line for me. I'm going to talk to them tomorrow. It's almost kind of like a VA office in China, right? You can delegate stuff to, or send people to factory, or do a final inspection, or and just do the paperwork and admin, get all that out the way.
All right, wonderful. Well, David, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and sharing with myself and the audience from your years of experience the best practices in sourcing products from China. In the show notes, we'll have links to your website. We'll have links to your LinkedIn profile. So if anyone wants to get a hold of you, that will be easily done.
Great. Thank you, Trent. What I'll do as well for you, Trent, is because we've been talking so much about trade shows, I actually did a virtual trade show tour where I went to a trade show and sat with suppliers, negotiated with them, visited factories. So I'll send you a link to that as well. If you want to share it with people, you're welcome. It's quite a good watch, actually. It's A to Z of trade shows.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.